I'm so thrilled to be here with Marc Violo, who I have not known for that long, but I am super inspired and so excited to bring this third F of my flora, fauna, fungi phenomenon and forces to Resilience Gone Wild in like this beautiful depth and super creative, intriguing, business-oriented and art-oriented. Anyway, so let's get to chatting with Marc. He is the creator and leader of Myco Stories, and this is where we're going to go with this. So tell us about yourself, Marc.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Jessica. Love that you're differentiating plants and fungi, because a lot of people put both of these in the bag, and there's a lot of work being done at the moment to, give a bit more credit to fungi as an individual living kingdom. And that's a little bit what we're trying to do as well at Myco Stories, effectively helping all of the incredible applications of fungi, which is an incredibly diverse living kingdom, over 2.5 estimated billion species. That's almost 10 times as more as we estimate plants to have.
Stop. We have to, just to process that, right? We have lumped the ignorance, right, of lumping all fungi into plant species when there's zillions times more. It's just so interesting. We need to separate this and really focus on it and really embrace the zillions of benefits to having fungi more intentionally in our lives. Okay, go for it.
No, that's right. And I love the enthusiasm. Actually, most people think of fungi or mushrooms as, this popping living organism that you find on tree stumps, in the soil, in your grasslands. But that's just really one family of mushrooms. But the biggest variety really comes in all shapes and forms, from microscopic fungi that live in your gut, from other species that live in the roots of plants and so forth. But there's a lot of mycology experts that are far greater than myself to talk about all this. But I wanted to support in my own way. My background is a mix of business and circular economy. So tech and circular economy, if I can summarize it that way. And what I've learned over the 20 years of my career is effectively to focus on tangible solutions, ideally that are nature-based, in order to change our economies for the better. Because if you look for solutions in nature, they're most likely going to be more integrated, will have better externalities once implemented. And so what's really interesting is...
Well, I think you're talking systems-based, right? If you go to nature, you can't just pick one tiny little bit of a system. It's all the interconnection, the diversity of a system is so key. And the symbiosis of, I think, all fungi, I assume, and it's just such an enormous part of it that we need to be able to think about and to process the complexity.
Yeah, we're going a bit in a tangent, but I'll give you a very simple example, right? If you look at modern agriculture today, we're using mostly petrochemical-based derived herbicides, fertilizers, yeah? So what we're putting in the ground is not used to being in that ground, right? So naturally, it's not necessarily going to be integrated very well by those ecosystems. Well, if we look at fungi, who are incredible enzyme manufacturers, to develop these fertilizers or herbicides, well, then we're leveraging what is already in the ground and using that to biostimulate the crops. And so naturally, the externalities, the reintegration of such product in the ground is going to be much, much better for ecosystems.
Yeah, I have to give our audience a warning, because this whole topic of fungi is so complex and so interesting and so broad, right? You already said there's zillions of different species of fungi that, I just want to put it out there that we're going to bounce around, because I just want to bring up, and you're the perfect person to do this with, all the different applications. And and integrated pest management is some part of where you're going with this small bit, which is only a small part of the brilliance of the contribution that fungi and the resilience of fungi offer in terms of making the world better, and in terms of our learning for resilience for ourselves, how much we can learn from them. And I was just thinking, which is not related at all, but that my world stepping into nature and integrated pest management was, I'm going to put it out there that in 85, I worked for Ralph Nader for the summer, writing articles about integrated pest management. It was it was relatively a long time ago, early in this conversation. And I get super lit up even going in that direction. So thank you for bringing that up, and keep going down that and many other paths, because this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, so I'll keep the intro short so we can get into the thick of it. But yeah, effectively set up a international platform which helps to support all the innovators in the space of fungal biotechnologies. And what that means is solutions derived from fungal processes in the space of food, health, drug development, health supplements, in the space of biomaterials to replace packaging or to replace animal-based leather, for example, or polluting construction materials, but also in the space of what I call soil, which is everything linked to agriculture, forestry management, carbon sequestration projects. And there's many other fields out there, but to sum it up, I like to divide it in those 4 fields. And so we support startups, entrepreneurs. We support investors to try and make them with these startups. We work with larger industry groups who are starting to think and invest heavily into nature-based solutions because market demands it, because customers demand it.
And because it's a good economic decision. Long-term good economic decision.
It needs to be, because sustainability is no longer the driving vector. It was maybe for 10, 20 years, but macroeconomic context has made that big businesses are kind of shifting back to the bottom line is what matters first and foremost. And if there's sustainability benefits added to that, okay. But, the bottom line is it needs to be an economic competitive advantage first and foremost. So yeah, that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. We've worked with probably over 50 organizations in the 4 continents of this planet. And there's way, way more to do.
Okay. What a great intro. What a great start. We don't know anything about you yet, though. And you are one interesting person. So that was just the last 3 years of what you've been working on. Can you give us why fungi? How did you get here? Like, what lights you up? Why are we in this conversation?
Yeah. So I'm French originally. I was lucky to live abroad growing up, lived in the States, lived in Germany and Belgium, lost my French accent along the way, studied business.
Still a little tiny bit of that beautiful French accent.
That's right.
So you got just enough.
little tidbits of it. Yeah, I studied business because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Had the opportunity of learning where business is done in the most exciting way in India. So I did my master's in New Delhi. I then had the opportunity of doing my first job in China, in Shanghai. So I went to China in 2008, worked for the largest Chinese tech company called Tencent, known for one of its main product called WeChat, and got to learn Mandarin, got to really immerse myself in Asian culture. And I think I discovered the quite interesting nature of fungi when I was there, because they're a ubiquitous part of traditional Chinese medicine. So if you go on market stalls across China, you'll find really weird looking structures, which from a Western point of view, you will not assimilate to mushrooms. But actually, these funny looking mushrooms called reishi, which have over 1,000 years of use in traditional Chinese medicine, are there. They're sold in powders. They're also sold as beautiful sculptures that wealthy Chinese families put in their homes. And so that got me interested. Then I went off to live in Singapore, set up an innovation agency there, funded by the Singapore government. But I was far from home, so decided to move back with my wife to the UK in London, where we're currently based, and to try and kind of capitalize on all this knowledge that was mostly profit driven. I was working for tech companies and for large companies, and to try and see what could happen if I honed that knowledge and focused on supporting circular economy initiatives. And that was what led me to start discovering the incredible and diverse world of fungal biotech or fungal solutions, of which I've named a couple already. And yeah, because I'm a very kind of tangible, action focused person, the first thing that I did when I started to read about the topic was I want to talk. I want to meet, just like you, Jessica, with all the people who are really driving the space.
Yeah.
I didn't record a podcast, but these were personal, short conversations where I tried to understand what are these people doing, what are challenges that they're facing, and how could I be of service? And so, on the back of over 100 conversations over a couple of years, I realized that all of these people were facing three main challenges. The first one was, how do I raise funding to, bring these small pilot scale solutions to life and to deliver some real impact? How do I scale? It's great to do a little experiment in my garage or in my lab, but actually there's no impact or there's no business model if you don't get to a certain scale. But when you're working with a living organism, it'll come with a bunch of challenges to scale production. But thankfully, there's a lot of people who've done this before, so maybe we can learn from them. And the last one is something that you've dedicated the last couple of years of your life doing is education.
Yeah.
Most people have no idea what fungi, mushrooms, mycelium really are, what they do, their role in the evolution of our ecosystems over time, their role in our microbiome. And the reason why I decided to dedicate my life to them is because I got so blown away when I discovered the amount that they are responsible of. I was like, look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's something there. Like, why have I not been taught anything about this living kingdom before? And so, yeah, I kind of decided to dedicate a large chunk of my life to them.
Amazing. It's those aha moments that it was like when I was talking to people about parrotfish and I learned the story of a parrotfish creating a bubble to protect its sleep. That it was like this, just one of the huge aha moments that was like, this is what I need to be doing, to like offering these stories up so that we can use them for metaphor. I mean, there's just like these aha moments. And you had this, like starting in Shanghai with this like, wow, this is not the mushroom I knew. This is not as simple. And to like this, like, wow, mind blowing. This is so big. Why is this under the radar? Like, how do we not know and appreciate the opportunity? I don't think I've ever given an explanation for circular economy, which I think is really, really important. Like, I try to get into regenerative, and that's kind of complex also. But just give us a quick circular economy. It was where you went with this to, like, in your brain, I think, like, these are some of the imagery is around this circular aspect. So give us a quick one.
Yeah. So I think since the dawn of civilized times, so give or take 10,000 years, we've lived in a world of abundance where we had a lot of land, a lot of resources. And so we were never really thinking about how to optimize when we use this land and resources. So it kind of led to a production and consumption and disposal model that was very linear, make, consume, dispose. And we realized as population really grew to the numbers that they are today and resources became scarcer, that actually this model has a lot of externalities which are negative to our human health and negative to the ecosystems in which we live in. And so a lot of people started thinking maybe this linear system doesn't work because we're just accumulating these ridiculous volumes of waste. We're wasting 30% of the food that we produce. We're changing and buying new clothes seasonally, but we don't have a proper recycling model for clothing or most complex plastics that we've developed in the 20th century. And so the concept of circular economy is when you design a product, you think about the whole life cycle of the product that you're designing, which means that ideally you're using materials that once produced, you can ideally repair So you
Well, the
extend.
10 R's. The 10
That's
R's
right.
are
The
great.
10,
Yeah.
15, let's.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you want to try and repair, you want to extend its life because it means you won't need to produce it again. And then eventually everything runs its course. The product won't be repairable anymore. So how do you reintegrate it back into its own supply chain or ideally another supply chain? So yeah, to keep it simple as, how do you get the life cycle as circular as possible in everything that you design or that you produce?
Yeah. I mean, right now, if you just use those three, the make, consume, waste, the volume of all three of those, we're making too much, which the step before that, the extraction of raw materials that go into, right, like into the making, we're using too much of that. We're making too much. We're consuming too much of the world, not all of the world. Some of the world is consuming too little. And we're just disposing of it and then disregarding it, right? Like we are pretending that you can just throw stuff out and it will disappear. And this whole circle versus linear is just the key to everything. And I try to like think of a really accessible example, and what popped in my head, and I'm not sure if you've got one that works that you've tested and makes sense in terms of the story better. But I'm just thinking about cooking dinner, right? Like you're making dinner for your family and you think about the input. So you go to the supermarket and your refrigerator is full of all this stuff and your pantry's full of all this stuff and all the inputs and you don't think about where any of them actually come from. So you've started with this pretend basket that has no origin. So there's no circle there, right? It's just the first point of extraction. And then you make something and then you potentially consume way too much of it or not, but there's going to be waste, right? There's going to be waste in the stuff that you left behind when you were preparing it. And there's waste in the extra food. And then you just throw it out, right? Like it doesn't work. Like, just to bring it down to really understanding the tangibility of life, it is all about that cycle. So give us what's coming to you when you think of my little example. What's coming to mind?
Yeah, I'd add to what you said that even before it gets to the consumer, there's the industrial manufacturer of your ketchup, for example, who's only going to use, let's say, 50% of the tomato, and it's going to get rid of the skins, it's going to get rid of the seeds, and then it's going to add a variety of other products. Some of them, will have to be manufactured, not necessarily issued from a kind of a recycling process. And so you can already think in terms of circularity at this stage where, well, what could we do with the seeds and the skins that are being wasted at this stage, right? And there's a fantastic organization in the south of France that is doing exactly that. It's working with tomato processors, the largest in Europe, and it's creating a fermented product that adds texture and taste from seeds and skins of tomato. And it's selling it back to the tomato manufacturer for it to, really try and embrace that circularity. And on top of that, give a new nutritional or new flavoring profiles to the products that they're manufacturing.
Yeah, we're throwing out the stuff that has all the nutrition in it, right? The skins, the seeds, all of it. Anyway, okay, so I took you totally off. Thank you so much. I think that was really important to like have that new vocabulary for a lot of people and to really understand it. So thank you. We can come back to it when it comes to micro stories and the work you're doing with fungi. So stories, I want to take you. So we've sort of touched on what lit you up about fungi. What about the stories? Like we talked about this for a bit before we got on, but I'm obsessed with stories. Stories are what people remember. Stories are what people connect to, not as opposed to the facts and the question of truth and whatever. So go down the story path. Tell us about stories.
We can even go back before the dawn of civilization, right? The things that have connected human beings for millions of years is the capacity for ourselves to tell each other stories, right? That's what unites us. That's what is at the origin of shared culture. And I think that's the best testament to the importance of stories to get messages across, important messages across. So when I started Myco Stories, myself not being a scientist or a biologist or a mycologist, what I thought was really important to help to, I guess, carry across the important messages and what we can learn from fungi as a microorganism, but also the very tangible applications of fungi are through accessible stories that talk about people. People need to hear about people. That's why we anthropomorphize everything. We like to, relate to human emotions and the challenges of setting up a company, the successes of publishing a research paper. So focusing on people, focusing on tangible solutions, because people relate to things that impact their direct life. So if we talk about, how we can make the food system more resilient, people are like, oh yeah, well that's important for my kids' future and so forth. And then really importantly, make stories understandable. And because I don't have that scientific background, I was the first one to really feel ill at ease when I was trying to read through research papers or tried to read complex pitch decks from startups that were, going to revolutionize the drug discovery industry. But, I was reading through this and oh my Lord, it was impossible for me to really grasp all of it. And so I thought that if we tried to popularize these stories, make them relatable, and ideally have elements of call to action. How can I participate? What are these people looking for? What do they need in order to fulfill and follow up on the initial work that is being done? We would render great service to a microorganism and an innovation space that has a huge potential for disruption and improvement of the society we live in.
Yeah, I mean, you've brought together this combination between the science and the business aspect and made it all accessible through story, which is a beautiful space to be in because we need to be able to connect to fungi, to this massive network, and we don't have an entry point, right? Like all we have is these mushrooms. So giving us this new vocabulary and stories, thank you, like huge. Thank you so much. And supporting and inspiring and helping small companies that are taking this natural cycle of life forward and replacing nature, replacing the oil and the plastics and all the rest of the stuff that's damaging our society and replacing it with something natural is just such a gift. So thank you. Okay. So we've got stories. We've got the whole sort of the fungi starter point, circular economy starter point. Let's just go to something fun. Like, tell us about what you were blown away by that you learned, like going from, I mean, you told us a little bit about seeing this new looking stuff in the Shanghai markets, but like, give us a couple of fun stories about when you discovered that this was fungi and that it was something else, that it could be made into something else that mattered. So what comes to mind? Some of your incubators or?
Yeah. So many examples. I surprised myself that after, 3 years of having launched this project, probably 6 years of having done research in this space, every week I still discover something new. I'll just pick one of the more recent examples. We're starting to develop material, bioactive material. When I say bioactive, it's the good kind of bio, by the way, not the radioactive. Radioactive, bioactive.
Yep. You know what? Since not everybody's watching this, you got to explain it. So tell us radioactive versus bioactive. What is bioactive?
Bioactive means we're effectively drawing from some of the active compounds, great molecules that a lot of plants and fungi have in their composition, and we're absorbing them or we're using them for our benefit. I'm not an expert on anything radioactive. I think I have the same understanding as most that, radioactive is not necessarily the type of stuff you want in or around you.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to energy. Like for me, it goes to energy. Like you've got positive energy and negative energy that ripples from whatever we do. And the reality is that every single thing we do, whether it's facial or, nonverbal expression or language, any move we make, any decision we make has positive and negative energy. And if we can intentionally think about sending out positive energy, and you've got radioactive energy, which is somewhat negative, I would say, to our world, versus the positive energy of bioactive, that's where I'm going with
Yeah,
it. So yeah.
for sure. So there has been research published, a couple actually, over the last 12 months, that is using certain fungus that have wound healing properties. And so they're extracting bioactive compounds of these fungi, and they're integrating it in band-aids or in material that you can put on top of wounds that will, at the same time that they protect the wound, they actually accelerate the healing process of the wound because you have these incredible compounds. And so I think the potential for leveraging fungi in the healthcare industry is huge.
Yeah.
There's literally dozens of research papers being published on the diversity of applications, from helping to cure Alzheimer's, Crohn's disease, all sorts of diseases that are impacting millions every week. And because we only know about 10% of the fungi compared to those 2.5 million that I've mentioned, we're only starting to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
And
wait, I just want to throw it out there that just something that I think is dramatically underknown, undervalued, under everything, is that this is happening in the plant and just in the world, and has been for a long time. That, and I think of certain things like honey, and this is an animal, it's plant and animal. So like honey is used for wound care. And I know in the sea turtle world, when in the sea turtle hospital that I volunteer at, they actually use honey in the bandages. So it's one of many examples, I think, of wound care. And I picture, there's a story of the orangutans, I think it's the orangutans have been, and bears who have seen chewing up certain plants that they know that the compounds in them, if they chew them up and they literally use them as bandages, that they can heal faster. I mean, that there's so much that we've already started to do. And it seems like fungi is like such an unbelievable low-hanging fruit, no pun intended, to learn to like just it's not really biomimicry. That's a whole separate world, but like just, and then I, the story, I had written a blog about it, like Ozempic, and the semaglutides actually come from a Gila monster, and learning about the Gila monsters, the chemical structure that keeps away the hunger and all that. And like much of what we do when we companies create new compounds for anything, whether it's for health or it's for materials or it's for food or whatever, is coming from nature, and we don't talk about it. So like your Myco stories is all about talking about it. And I'm about talking about it. Like, we need to understand how much we are connected, integrated, dependent in this world as a system with nature, that we're not coming up with all this stuff like and making it out of nothing. So where does that go when you're smiling? Where's that going for you and it's your path of?
No, I think, I guess from the perspective of Myco Stories, we started by talking about it. And through talking about it, a large community started building around that conversation. Today, we have around 70,000 people who engage and subscribe and relate to the content we publish. And this has helped to create a beautiful network, mycelial of sorts.
Yeah.
And so we started to really be placed in a unique position to create synergies between the different people that were confronted to different challenges. So from talking, we went to acting on these challenges by really positioning ourselves as an organization that can really help to fast track the work happening in this space, and that can help to lower the barriers, break down the barriers, so that all of the incredible pioneers in the space feel better supported, have access to more resources, and and ideally can focus more on like doing the work as opposed to convincing others that their work is valuable.
Yeah. And stories are so much fun, right? So, I mean, if you just go into, and we'll put it in the show notes, mycostories.com, is that the website? Like the stories are amazing. Like, whether it's building surfboards or it's bandages or it's, the diapers, right? I mean, and these, in terms of the circular economy, go back into the ground and don't, and they're supposed to be there, right? Like it's a whole cycle that can get reused. Yeah. Check out Myco Stories for the stories. They're really exciting. They're really interesting. They're really thought provoking. So anyway, I'm just blown away by them. So I'm one of your 70,000 for sure.
Love the excitement.
Yeah, I'm all about excitement. Okay. So let's step back a minute also in terms of just vocabulary and understanding. Tell us about the networks, the mycelium networks. Like I touched on it in my Mother's Day episode around mother trees and the ancient forests and how everybody's connected and the wood wide web. But we need more. We need to understand it better. So tell us the story of the network that's all connected through fungi.
Yeah. So look, there's a huge, beautiful narrative that trees communicate through these mycelial networks. And the first thing I want to say is, once again, humans are great at anthropomorphizing concepts. And so maybe it's not exactly the way we imagine it. What we know scientifically is that there is a symbiosis between 80 to 90% of plant species, so not just trees, but all plant species with different fungal hosts, different fungi species. They vary by the hundreds of thousands. And
that
it
we
is
know
true
so far. Those are just the ones
that we know so far.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And these fungi live potentially around the roots or within the roots and have the capacity to develop little white threads that you might have seen when you dig up a patch of healthy soil, or if you kick a dry log and suddenly you see exposed these white hyphal threads. And so what we call mycelium network is effectively the interconnected hyphal threads that can expand up to, I think, a couple of hectares. In Oregon, you have what is deemed to be the largest living organism. And so what is scientifically proven again is that within these threads, you have a lot of nutrients, carbon, sugars that are minerals that are basically flowing as you would see on a highway, a fungal highway. And these nutrients are going in all directions, sometimes changing directions, sometimes going from one plant to another. A lot of it being effectively managed like nature's stock market, if you want, by the hyphal network. And it exists because fungi, especially the ones living in the soil, do not have the ability to photosynthesize, which means that they can get the sugars that plants are excellent at getting through that process. But plants, because they have very thick roots compared to fungal hyphae, do not have the capacity to access and break down very small nutrients in the soil, minerals and so forth. And so over the course of hundreds of millions of years, through the course of evolution, they have developed this symbiotic relationship where the fungi is like, okay, well, give me a bit of your carbons and your sugars, and in exchange of that, I'm going to help you access what is harder for you to access. And there has been some really interesting research around these networks sometimes favoring one plant partner over another one. But again, we're still early on in all that process of research, and so I think it is incredible what we see. It is incredible to think that 80 to 90% of plant species have these relationships, and a lot of them
and need these relationships. They don't just have them; they're dependent on them.
Or if they don't have them, you need to find a way to give these nutrients to the plants. So that's what happens in modern agriculture, because the soil of a modern day field that is heavily reliant on petrochemical pesticides and herbicides probably has a very poor soil, probably with little or no of these fungal symbiosis happening. So they've replaced what happens beautifully in the soil naturally by an alternative, right?
And which means it's dead and it has to keep being recreated from scratch each time. It doesn't just.
Which is a great business case.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, yeah, I think it's incredible what evolution has created between these two living kingdoms. Nota bene, we are much closer to fungi than we are to plants as animal. We
Okay,
actually
that's so
share,
interesting. Go down that path. That is cool.
We share over 50% of our DNA with fungi. I think it's 98 with bonobo or chimpanzees, but yeah, with fungi, it's already 50%.
It's pretty crazy. Just like for a moment to like just stop and process that. Like that is really pretty incredible that our DNA is, I think that most people have no concept of this, that our DNA in living carbon-based material, carbon-based any, species or carbon-based anything are connected to that level. Like, yeah. Anyway, wow. Mind blowing. Okay, I want to pick up on something else you said that I think is super important because my brain kind of goes to the resilience question, and this goes down that you quickly said sometimes there's a reversal, like there's a switch of which direction the information and the nutrients and the everything is going. And to me, that's all about connection. Like that's about a healthy system where it's not one directional, a system that works together and feeds each other and feeds itself and grows together. Like I'm all about metaphor. So can you do what's coming to mind for you around that? Like I got a smile again from you. So like something's popping up in your head around this.
Yeah, so I'm really, really intrigued and a big supporter of the work of a nonprofit organization in the space called SPUN, the Society for the Protection of Underground Networks.
Oh, I love it.
Which has probably one of the boldest missions out there in the world of mycorrhizal networks, mycelium networks, which is effectively to map out the mycelium networks globally. Wow. Small task, and they do some really, really fantastic groundwork. So they're literally going to collect samples of soil on all continents. They've got ambassadors on all continents, and they're effectively trying to, understand all of these interactions much better. And they publish incredible research papers. One of their latest one was published in Nature last month. Strongly encourage everyone to go and have a read.
We will put them in the show notes, and people do read the show notes. So we will, yes, it will be there.
And they've identified, they don't understand it yet, but they're noticing these changes of pattern. So what does it mean? Well, maybe it means that this organism is somewhat conscious because it decides from one reason or another that, actually, this little molecule of carbon, it's probably not optimal for it to go that way. So why don't we reverse that and have it go somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, go down that path because, it's at most people, I think in general, get are accepting of a level of sentience of primates, right? Okay. So, and then, mammals maybe, but there's such a lack of understanding of sentience in so much of even the animal species community, let alone plant, fungi, all the other parts of nature and parts of our world. And I think it's so incredibly important to process the concept of sentience. And so go for this because it's close to my heart. Like I love sharing that. Why say no when you instead could say, I'm curious, maybe, right?
Yeah, well, what I've learned after just about 40 years living on this planet on 4 continents and, having talked to a variety of folks is that with every day that goes by, I actually know less.
Right. Yeah. The more you know, the more you don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. I've recently, through an amazing podcast called Telepathic Tapes, also to add in the footnotes that, it is not impossible and it is actually fact that some people, in this case, kids diagnosed with severe autism and who are nonverbal, have the capacity to read other people's mind. I'm simplifying, but that's the catch. Yeah.
I can't wait to read it. I'm excited for it to be in the story.
And what that means, when I looked into it and was listening to this podcast, it completely, again, new eureka moment. It completely challenged a lot of the assumptions that I've had all my life around the power of the mind, around communication, around how information can be transmitted. And what that means is it's not because science cannot explain it that it doesn't exist. And I believe because we are 50% at least fungi, and because, as you said, we are all from very similar eukaryotic molecules. We're all from, at least fungi and animals are all from that evolutionary trait. It means that, yeah, we probably share much more than we think we do, and we have to leave space for that. And we have to open our imagination, I believe, over what is common practice, common thought. And I think the more we open our minds, the more scary it is because we can't explain it, but also the more open we will be to understanding and potentially grasping some of these incredible natural things that are happening and that we can't explain.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about the broaden and build theory, which is all about what you just said, which is if you add judgment and you decide what is not acceptable and gives you some ease to your fear of uncertainty, then you shut down and you can't be innovative. You can't be creative. You can't be curious. You can't be empathetic. You literally, your brain does not allow, because it's intentionally blocking out all that potential expanded thought. So if you just stop with the no, the N-O, not the K-N-O-W, that's funny actually. And you expand, you open yourself up to new questions and push aside the fear of uncertainty, the world opens up. And it's so much more fun. Like, you didn't say that, but to me, that's what it is. It's like so much more fun to think about bigger stuff and the possibility than it is to be sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, fully resonate.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us in that path, I know that you had mentioned that like some of the Myco stories is about art and creativity and a lot of the work that's happening that you're inspiring and that you're enabling and empowering within, Myco stories and your incubator and all the rest of it. So we don't know enough about it yet. So tell us some of the cool things that are going on, the hopes and the dreams of you and the network and the players and the participants. So go with it. Just tell us more. It's so exciting.
Yeah. So, I like to say I've become I'm an accidental entrepreneur because I had a vision. I had an idea originally for a project that I thought would really entertain me. And I launched it. I like to do more than talk. And I like to listen as well. And, so I've had to effectively build something really based on the feedback I was getting from the different stakeholders I was speaking with, which has made it for a really interesting journey of building a company. But it also means that it's very early stage. We're 3 years in. I work with 2 business partners and have worked with 22 consultants who are all superheroes in the fungal world, but it's still very much the beginning. What I hope Myco Stories can achieve over time is, number one, because money is still king in this society we live in, it's understanding who are the people out there who are really interested in supporting innovation, not just sustainability, but like business cases that will support sustainability.
Yeah.
And
moving it to the next level, like not taking what we have now of sustainable and accepting that that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really putting business first and sustainability as a byproduct of this incredible business case, which is nature-based and so forth. So, calling out to the money where it's at, because yes, the investment landscape is much more complex and restricted as it was a couple of years ago, but there's still a lot of people making a lot of money.
Mhm.
And there's still a lot of people with a rising desire to leave a positive
Yeah.
print on this planet. So, involving these guys and educating them on the topic, connecting them with fantastic folks that are leading change and leveraging fungi, um, making sure that we educate the masses as well, right? Why did I have to wait to be in my 30s to understand that, a mushroom is not a plant? I was never taught anything about this in biology. So the Fungi Foundation, for example, Chilean-based organization, does an incredible job at pushing out curriculums that any teacher can use in their class to start putting this concept forward through, very fun activities.
Awesome. Okay, it's
So
gonna be
that's
in the
great.
show notes too. Sorry. Yeah.
There you go. So we start early on, and then we keep on influencing people at different stages of their life and in their profession. So, what can we do from a policy standpoint to provide more recognition for fungi as a living organisms in conservation practices?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we educate and influence the regulators in charge of our agriculture industry, of our food industry, so that novel mushrooms are deemed safe to consume with positive benefits on our health, and that we don't necessarily stay rooted in a lot of the mycophobia, which is deeply rooted in most of the West, with some exceptions, and which is completely opposite in the East, with Japan, Korea, China really leading the way on kind of traditional usage. If Myco Stories can try to help push this general global agenda, more people paying attention, more people being involved and supporting in they can, time, expertise, or money, I'll give myself a nice tap on the back and keep on going.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned so many really, really important basic conversations we should be having, right? Like that fungi is actually a healthy addition to our lives, and we need to understand more about it, and we need to get it into policy and get it into the government agencies that that need to open up their work that they're doing to include fungi. This whole world that's missing from policy discussions and science research and all that's funded through governments. So thank you. If raising the stature and the importance is huge. Conservation, I mean, how do we take care of, since it's invisible, right? Primarily invisible. So we can't see the green shoots either coming up or not coming up because of drought or whatever, or the animals, or the extinctions that we hear about. Like conservation is a topic that we're not talking about at all in terms of the entire fungal network that is a massive part of our world the symbiosis enabling those green shoots to come up that we can eat.
Yeah.
And then mycophobia, like, the difference between the Eastern, Western, both medicine and just life, the connection with nature and the connection with our earth is so different. I don't know how that happened. Like, how did that even happen? And how do we undo that? How do we build that head somewhere in this Western culture towards more open-minded and less fear-based around novel, around new? Thoughts?
Thoughts? I think it comes originally from a question of beliefs and culture.
Yeah.
If you look at Christianity, which was, one of the founding pillars of modern society, and if we just take Europe and the U.S., and then the influence Christian religion had also in Latin America and in different parts of Africa. As I had a fantastic conversation with a nun in a car share journey in France.
Awesome.
Fantastic conversation I had with a sister Fosti. In her eyes, nature, man was above nature, and
Yep.
nature was there to serve the man, the humankind. And so from that very basic concept, already conservation is going to take a hit at some point. And if you look at Asian cultures that have different belief systems. Some of them are animists, are very rooted in the wisdom of nature. In Japan, for example, well, that basic, foundational belief is already very, very different, right? So
Yeah.
you relate to nature differently. And so you naturally are going to have, different approaches into its conservation. So, you know, the interesting thing is, in the end, regardless of the belief systems, I think what the belief system that won it over everything is capitalism, which is another religion, probably the most popular religion at the moment, which superseded the potential relationship to nature that some of the folks in Asia had, because you still have the same still degradation, a lack of conservation policies in a lot of Asian countries as you have them in the West,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah, you look at the abuse of so many animals that are being extracted for Asian medicine.
all sorts.
There's this disconnect that there used to not be a disconnect, and now there's this capitalism
Yeah.
driven disconnect. Yeah.
I think Yuval Noah Harari, the author of *Sapiens* and many other groundbreaking books, says it very well in his follow-up book to *Sapiens* in *Homo Deus*, right? It is us above everything else. And I think what I've loved about working in the fungi community is we tend to really try and step down from this pedestal of us above everything else, but try to understand how we are part of everything. And if we want to work with, and yeah, it's like working with nature as opposed to working using it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those points are so, so important. And I have my very strong biases. I studied religion for quite a while, and what bubbled to the top was certainly the hierarchical permission to use, abuse, extract, own, and which is the short term versus the long term thinking. And it's so interesting that you brought us to a place, where thinking process has moved because of capitalism, towards the Western, and it's not helping, but that we're shifting back. Like we're telling stories and we're bringing attention to important things. And when hopefully we're doing some shifting back. Okay. So I've taken tons of your time and I so appreciate it. Give us some, what have we not talked about? What words of wisdom do we need to know that really are the basis and drive you and the work you're doing and future that you're creating for us? So big question.
Wow. Well, the good thing is, I can pretty much go wherever I want with it.
Yes.
So I think that as as young adults start taking decisions in life, the ones that have the luxury of asking themselves question, so not kids that don't get the chance to go to university because they need to, have one or two jobs already to support families. So these guys, unfortunately, don't have a choice most times. But for all the people who do have the choice, have the luxury to study what they want, manage to reimburse their university debt after some years and get in a position of comfort, is, to really ask themselves whether they feel the model we live in is really working. And based on that answer, this very personal answer, what they can do at their scale to potentially change things, to direct the global way things work nowadays towards models that resonate more with what they would want to see more of. And so that means, keeping a strong sense of self, but like an honest and some level of integrity as well. And not necessarily doing what the society expects you to do, but really trying to look deeper within you to, what resonates. And
as you're saying, it doesn't have to be loud. It's quietly within you, but be reflective. Think about your values, align your life with your values, and align and choose values that really make you feel good about your life.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily need to be a black sheep. You can be a black sheep. We need black sheeps, but you can also be a sheep, but that kind of like thinks and challenges and
Yeah.
thinks differently. And I think people need to learn to have more dialogue with people that have different opinions than themselves, to learn also why these people are coming from where they're coming from, right?
Don't say no, say, tell me more.
Tell me more and listen.
Yeah.
Too often I speak with people who, have this anxiety of, putting their point across, and in the process, just, forget to listen to the people that they're speaking to. And actually it's more fun to listen, because your point of view, sure, put it across and like listen and learn, stay curious, and you talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen more than you talk and do more than you talk. And I would say, think about yourself in a network, like a mycelium network or whatever the right term is. Like, we do not live in a disconnected world. We live completely integrated and connected to each other and to nature, and our ripples matter and our energy matters, and the multi-directional sharing matters. It's a way to think that is so much more productive for a win-win-win.
Yeah. I've just come up with this little motto for humankind: with less scrolling, more digging.
I love it. Oh, less scrolling, more digging. I love that. I love that. Hey,
put your hands in the soil, be curious, and go dig for information. Challenge the information that's just given to you, and dig deeper in the relationships around you.
And without judgment, just curiosity, not judgment. You can only do one or the other. They can't live together. Okay, so tell us what you're working on, what you're going. What's the next steps? I know that there's some really powerful offerings that you're separate from the supporting of these individual companies and inventions and creations. You've got some actual products that you share and that are part of your offerings. Like, you've got the fungi industry map, which is really cool. Some graphics, there's art. Like, tell it, just go. What are you doing? What's coming? What do we have now? What's coming? And what do you want us to know about Myco stories that you can leave us with, so that we're all in?
Sounds good. So I would suggest anyone listening and still listening to go on to Myco Stories, which is MYCO for mycology, and look at the different categories of content we have out there to see what resonates most. If you come from the industry and you're more interested in the professional side of things, head over to the ecosystem page to get a sense of the hundreds of organizations that are developing mind-blowing applications in different sectors, and subscribe to our newsletter so you can, feel the drumbeat of the fungal kingdom and what's happening in the next couple of months. We're speaking at a number of conferences in the UK and Austria. I'm always looking for opportunities to, spread the word and be able to participate in debates that might be heavily nature focused or not. Again, let's speak to everyone. Let's listen to everyone. So reach out if you feel that there would be an interesting fit for collaboration. And I'll pause it at that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marc. It's been such a joy, and start kicking us off on some really complex as well as really basic understanding of the fungal network. And we're going to keep going with this. So we'll have Marc back. We'll have more conversation in season 2. This is too important to keep under the radar. So thank you. And at some point, we'll touch on the mushrooms, the magic mushrooms, the edible mushrooms, whatever. But for right now, we're really talking more about this whole world. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
And thank you for the work you're doing. Amazing.
This has been a production of BLI Studios, produced by me, Kai. Follow along with our other BLI produced shows at balancinglifesissues.com/podcast-BLI. Got an idea for the show? Email me, Kai, at balancinglifesissues.com. And don't forget to stay in touch with your host, Jessica, at jessica@winwinwinmindset.com. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah.